The first thing that comes to mind when you think about buying land is that it's expensive. Well, can you buy land, say, when you have minimal savings? That's what we're talking about today, buying land in Kenya. And with us is Robert Kinyua. He is the marketing director at ProLand Realtors. Robert, tell us what qualifies an area as being prime land and how can one get to it?
Well, prime land, as just like you put it, it's as basic as that. One, you want to appreciate the close proximity to services, complementary services. We're speaking about your shopping center. You want to rise up in the morning, not take too long in traffic. Again, you want to be close to your work or your workstation. Secondly is the infrastructure element. You want utilities to be there. You want power. You want water, sustainable, of course. The other element is security, which is very key. And ultimately, because every property that one invests in, whether you want to build your residence, you want to look at an investment part of it. So the capital gain aspect comes in. So you want something that will appreciate, and eventually, if you want to shift probably to another location, you can still dispose it off, make some money, just like someone who invested in other investment options.
Can you qualify prime land to be an area which, as you said, it's shopping centers and all this coming into play, but what if they're not there yet? Can you qualify it as still being prime?
One, you consider government projections in terms of placing all this infrastructure and where these developments are going. Now, we have examples of Tatu City, which is a couple of kilometers, 7 kilometers away from Nairobi CBD or thereabout. Well, very important, if you look at it with the future in mind and look at it again at what the developers in the locality have planned to put into place. So really what I'm bringing into perspective is the element of what plan is done in terms of infrastructure in the neighborhood.
There's a notion that land is very expensive in Kenya, and for people who may want to purchase land and may have minimal savings, can they still get to purchase this land?
Well, yes. Of course, market forces, that is demand and supply, come into play in a big way. That way, if so many people are looking into investing in the same property, of course the vendors will definitely increase the prices. That is, but I mean, very important is the cash pooling aspect. People coming together. A property might be X amount of money, which an individual may not afford. But if you pool your resources, you can easily get 1 acre, and out of that 1 acre, you get your subdivision. Everyone ends up with an eighth. Over a period of time, again, your bargaining capacity increases on the basis of how organized you are, and again on the basis of what potential you hold. So as opposed to an individual, as a group, again, gives you an upper hand.
There are many factors that you must consider before purchasing any land. Can you quickly tell us the vital factors that one should consider?
Well, one is the history of the land. Very important, because again of the legitimacy of the title that will be passed on to yourself, whether it's been historically public land, communal land, or has it been individually owned land? Has it been a freehold? Has it been a leasehold? These are very good aspects to look. Again, you look at where development aspects, or rather facilities are moving.
What kind of due diligence must a buyer conduct just before getting yourself into any kind of payment?
What comes into my mind is a recent occurrence of these developers who vanish. Investment in land is a capital investment. And there isn't a single location you can go and source all these facts about this land. With all these things happening here, there, in some of them in government offices. But very important and basic is for you to understand the history of the area. Like I said, you want to know how has what has this land been? Has it been a public facility? Has it been communal land? So very important is first of all to befriend the neighbors, get them to tell you little or something about the land. If the neighbors who are not necessarily privy to your intentions of asking, tells you that, or rather knows nothing much about the property being peculiar, then you might as well assume that you're on the right track. Because I know if land has ownership issues, one, you'll have hostile neighbors, hostile inhabitants. So very important is for you to get into the area, get to understand it, get source information basically from the neighbors, and if they're inhabitants, let them tell you. The government has custodians in all the counties. Please find your time, get there, talk to the officials, get to understand from a technical point how has this parcel of land transited from the initial, without necessarily as you run your official search for a report.
All right. You mentioned earlier about freehold and lists in terms of titles. Can you quickly differentiate that for our viewers and also just to bring in the factors that separate each?
Well, very basic is if you go to the rural areas, you realize that most of that land is fee simple, it's freehold, meaning that you may not be required to go or apply for an extension of the lease with the government. But now with the new constitution dispensation, it's now mandatory that if you're living within urban setups, for example, Nairobi and its neighborhood, any parcel of land like now, Ruiru initially was 99 years, which you looked at more or less freehold, because 999 years is quite long. Currently, all that after subdivision and registration of the new titles, it turns to 99 years, which is leasehold. After which, when the 99 years expires, you're meant to renew. There's an assumption in the market that if you do not get a title, a one document title, then you may not have, you may not enjoy the privileges of purchasing the land as far as charging the property for a facility or something like that. But what is, if even the option of the lease, which is now happening in the urban areas, you still enjoy the same privileges. The only difference is that you might need to seek renewal after the 99 years, which the practice is that it will definitely get renewed. Okay. Yeah, so it's as good as the freehold.
Tell us, what are the different types of land available for sale?
There's the commercial land, there's the residential land. Commercial land is what you put up an office space. Your Westlands, your Upper Hill, your CBD, that's all commercial land. Your Kilimani, partly Lavington now is becoming commercial. Yes. There's the residential land, which is what most of us are keen on and what we're conversant on, which is all these parcels of land that we buy and build our single dwelling homes in Kitengela, you know, Ruiru, I call it Runda. Again, you have your industrial area, which is fully high. I mean, it's purposely for industries. You're now coming up the light industrial, which has been brought up by our Tatu city, thanks to our brothers Brendeva, good. And you've your site and service, our normal here there Naivasha, our Longonauts, our Isinyas, where you've learned that has all these services and complementary the agribusiness aspect to it, where with all these parcels that you purchase and there's a greenhouse, you have your monthly income, how practical it is, it's yet to be proved. Okay.
Is it possible for someone to buy land, maybe that the area around is residential, but you can turn it to commercial, so it's a sort of mixed-use development?
Yes, I mean, I can't talk about this without mentioning the current developments that have the different users all in one environment. I mean, a very good example, and probably you might want to look at it as an urban, privately owned urban setups. I mean, just like you have Nairobi, you have all these complementary residences, which is Westlands. You have your initially Upper Hill, now turns commercial, Kilimani or Lavington. I mean, look at what is coming up. When Centum got into Two Rivers, initially it was agricultural land. And what is the neighborhood? It's purely residence, which is Runda and Gigiri. This has changed the way the neighborhood used to be, which is Waka. I mean, now we can see already there's retail. You know, there are residences coming, all furnished apartments, and unfurnished apartments, with office blocks, with hotels coming up in the same setup. So really, yes, it's possible.
There's so much into land, and as we've looked at buying and how to purchase in terms of even getting that land, whether you have minimal savings or not. This is a conversation that is definitely going to continue next Sunday when we look at compensation, title deeds, and so much more.